such behaviour. If you want to go out now, but if you stand again, I will order you out. Make your mind up. Either shut up and get out.
No one expected Parliament to explode like this. In a moment that stunned the entire nation, a fierce confrontation erupted on live TV as Keir Starmer faced one of the most brutal public takedowns of his leadership. The chamber fell silent, the tension was ice cold, and then, without warning, the attack began. Words sharper than steel were hurled across the floor, leaving Starmer visibly shaken as MPs reacted with gasps, outrage and disbelief. What happened in that chamber has now become the talk of Britain, and it may change Starmer's political future forever. The atmosphere inside Parliament had already been tense, but no one could have predicted how quickly it would spiral into a full-blown confrontation. Keir Starmer entered the chamber expecting a routine debate, yet the mood felt different. Charged, electric, almost dangerous. MPs leaned forward in their seats, sensing that something significant was about to unfold. The moment Starmer rose to speak, murmurs rippled through the room. Then, in a sudden and explosive moment, an outspoken MP interrupted him with a fierce accusation that cut directly to the heart of his leadership. The chamber erupted. Shocked faces turned toward the source of the outburst, while others stared at Starmer, waiting to see how he would react. The words that followed were even harsher. Starmer found himself at the centre of a storm as the MP launched into a relentless attack, accusing him of losing touch with the public, mishandling key issues and hiding behind polished speeches, instead of taking real action. What caught everyone off guard was not the criticism itself. Politics is no stranger to conflict. But the raw, personal tone of the remarks. It was the kind of confrontation usually avoided in the formal setting of Parliament, especially live on national television. The shockwaves were immediate. Journalists scrambled for their cameras and social media platforms lit up within seconds. Starmer attempted to respond, but every word seemed to land in a room that no longer wanted to hear him. Opponents pressed forward with more accusations, each one hitting harder than the last. Even some members of his own party appeared rattled by the intensity of the exchange. The Speaker struggled to restore order as the chamber dissolved into shouting, with MPs rising from their seats, pointing fingers, and demanding answers. Viewers at home watched in disbelief as the clash unfolded in real time, creating one of the most dramatic parliamentary moments of recent years. As the confrontation continued, Starmer's composure began to crack. His usual calm confidence was replaced by visible frustration, and for the first time, he struggled to maintain control of the narrative. Every attempt to defend himself was drowned out by the uproar. Commentators later described his expression as one of disbelief, caught between anger, embarrassment, and the realisation that his authority was slipping away in front of millions. What began as a routine session had transformed into a national spectacle, and Starmer stood at its centre, absorbing the political blows as they landed from every direction. The fallout from the brutal exchange spread through Parliament like wildfire. Even after the Speaker called for order, the tension refused to die down. MPs whispered urgently among themselves, some shaking their heads in disbelief, others smirking as if they had witnessed the beginning of something far bigger than a simple argument. The atmosphere felt heavy, almost suffocating, as Starmer attempted to continue his speech. But the damage had already been done. The shock of being publicly confronted so aggressively had left him visibly unsettled. And the opposition sensed weakness. They pressed forward with renewed force, launching questions and accusations designed to keep him off balance and expose any cracks in his authority. Outside the chamber, the media seized on every moment. Journalists rushed to draft headlines, each one more dramatic than the last. Clips of Starmer being cut off and verbally attacked played on loop across major networks. Commentators debated the meaning of the confrontation, with some calling it the most humiliating moment of his leadership. Others questioned whether Starmer had lost the respect of his opponents, and perhaps even members of his own party. Social media exploded with reactions, some mocking, others outraged, and many expressing disbelief that such a tense exchange had unfolded live on national television. The public had not only witnessed a rare moment of raw political conflict, they were now shaping the narrative. Meanwhile, behind closed doors, Starmer's team scrambled to regain control. His advisors convened an emergency meeting to discuss strategy. Some urged him to strike back publicly to show strength and take command of the situation. Others recommended a more careful approach, fearing that further escalation would only deepen the crisis, and the division within his inner circle mirrored the chaos unfolding outside it, uncertainty, frustration, and the growing fear that the confrontation had done irreversible damage. Several aides privately worried that the incident would embolden Starmer's critics, inviting more public challenges and weakening his grip on leadership. Inside Labour itself, pressure was building. MPs who had long remained silent began voicing concerns. Some demanded a stronger response from Starmer, while others questioned whether he could still unite the party after such a public blow. Even those who supported him felt uneasy, sensing that the confrontation had exposed a deeper problem, one that could no longer be ignored. Tension spread through the party ranks as members wondered whether this showdown marked a turning point, a moment when Starmer's authority began to truly unravel. Whispers of dissatisfaction grew louder, and loyalty, once steady, started to feel uncertain. As the day unfolded, one question lingered over Westminster like a shadow. Would Starmer recover from this humiliation, or had this live TV clash pushed his leadership closer to collapse? The political world was left waiting for his next move, knowing that whatever he chose could either restore his strength or accelerate his downfall. In the hours that followed the explosive clash, the political pressure around Keir Starmer tightened like a vice. Every corner of Westminster buzzed with speculation about what the confrontation truly meant. Some MPs insisted the outburst was spontaneous, an eruption of frustration that had been building for months. Others believed it was a calculated strike, deliberately timed to weaken the Prime Minister's standing and provoke a public reaction. Either way, the impact was undeniable. Starmer found himself isolated, surrounded by the noise of a political system that no longer moved in his favour. Every conversation carried an undertone of doubt. Every meeting felt colder. The confidence he once displayed now seemed dimmed, replaced by caution and unease. The opposition seized the moment with ruthless precision. Their leaders delivered a series of sharp, coordinated statements, each one hammering Starmer for what they described as a total loss of authority. They replayed clips of the confrontation again and again, framing it as proof that the Prime Minister had lost control of Parliament. Even neutral commentators began to question whether Starmer could continue to lead effectively after being publicly undermined so brutally. Some pointed out that a leader who cannot command the respect of the House cannot command the confidence of the country. The narrative began shifting rapidly from a heated argument to a full-blown question of leadership credibility. Meanwhile, Starmer's own party grew increasingly restless. Senior figures who once appeared unwavering in their support now hesitated in interviews, choosing their words carefully to avoid being tied to a sinking ship. A few outspoken members even hinted that change might be necessary for the sake of the party's future. Internal divisions widened as private discussions turned into heated debates about how to respond. Some believed the party must rally around Starmer to show unity. Others argued that continued loyalty would only lead to further damage. The Labour Party, already under immense strain, now faced the possibility of open rebellion outside Parliament. Public reaction intensified. The confrontation had struck a nerve, and people across the country voiced their frustration in powerful ways. Some questioned whether the political class had forgotten the needs of ordinary citizens. Others demanded stronger leadership, insisting that a Prime Minister who could be publicly challenged so fiercely might no longer be capable of steering the country through difficult times. The clash became more than a political moment. It became a symbol of a deeper disconnect between leadership and the people they were meant to serve. Starmer's image, once grounded in calm authority, now appeared fragile and shaken. As the day drew to a close, one thing became unmistakably clear. This showdown had not been a simple embarrassment. It had triggered A chain reaction, one that threatened to spread far beyond a single debate. The Prime Minister's future now hung in a delicate balance shaped not only by political calculations, but by public perception, party unrest, and the brutal reality that leadership can crumble in a single televised moment. With pressure rising from every direction, Starmer's next move was no longer just important, it was potentially decisive. A sudden tension swept across Britain. News networks froze mid-broadcast, anchors whispered off camera, and then an emergency alert rippled through every device in the country. The Supreme Court's written judgment had just been leaked. Not calmly, not formally, but as a thunderous document pushed onto the public stage like a political grenade. Inside it, one line stood out, cold, sharp, and unforgettable. This government action represents an overreach inconsistent with constitutional boundaries. Within seconds, the corridors of Westminster erupted. Labour MPs scrambled behind closed doors. Advisers were seen rushing between offices. Senior ministers reportedly argued over who had allowed the situation to escalate this far. No one agreed on the truth, and no one wanted to take the blame. Meanwhile, outside Parliament, crowds swelled. Some shouted for answers, some demanded resignation, some simply didn't know what to believe anymore. But then, just when the nation thought the storm had peaked, another twist detonated. A late-night broadcast cut across all major channels. Not from Downing Street, not from the government, but from a senior legal correspondent who claimed to have seen the full, unredacted version of the Supreme Court judgment. And what they revealed sent shockwaves through every corner of the UK. According to this explosive account, the court hadn't simply blocked a policy. It had directly challenged the government's interpretation of its own authority. For the first time in years, the nation heard a chilling phrase whispered across political circles: a constitutional fracture. Within minutes, pundits were debating whether this could trigger resignations, snap elections, or even internal party revolt. Rumours swirled of emergency meetings inside Labour headquarters, meetings described as panicked, frantic, and unprecedented. But the most dramatic moment came when a single statement appeared on social media from an unnamed senior cabinet figure. This government is in danger of losing control of the narrative and the country. That message was deleted moments later, but not fast enough. Screenshots spread everywhere. Commentators seized on it. Opposition MPs demanded answers, and protests outside Parliament grew larger, more agitated, more uncertain. As midnight approached, one thing became unmistakably clear. This was no longer just a legal dispute, no longer just political theatre. It had become something deeper, more chaotic. A nation holding its breath, waiting to see whether leadership would steady or collapse under pressure. And in the final moments of the broadcast, the narrator's voice cut through the noise with one question, hanging like a blade over British politics. If this is the beginning, but what on earth comes next? But then, just when the nation thought the storm had peaked, another twist detonated. A late-night broadcast cut across all major channels. Not from Downing Street, not from the government, but from a senior legal correspondent who claimed to have seen the full, unredacted version of the Supreme Court judgment. And what they revealed sent shockwaves through every corner of the UK. According to this explosive account, the court hadn't simply blocked a policy. It had directly challenged the government's interpretation of its own authority. For the first time in years, the nation heard a chilling phrase whispered across political circles: a constitutional fracture. Within minutes, pundits were debating whether this could trigger resignations, snap elections, or even internal party revolt. Rumours swirled of emergency meetings inside Labour headquarters, meetings described as panicked, frantic, and unprecedented. But the most dramatic moment came when a single statement appeared on social media from an unnamed senior cabinet figure. This government is in danger of losing control of the narrative and the country. That message was deleted moments later, but not fast enough. Screenshots spread everywhere. Commentators seized on it. Opposition MPs demanded answers, and protests outside Parliament grew larger, more agitated, more uncertain. As midnight approached, one thing became unmistakably clear. This was no longer just a legal dispute, no longer just political theatre. It had become something deeper, more chaotic. A nation holding its breath, waiting to see whether leadership would steady or collapse under pressure. And in the final moments of the broadcast, the narrator's voice cut through the noise with one question, hanging like a blade over British politics. If this is the beginning, what on earth comes next?